guess what? We're allowed to travel more than 5 kilometers from our house. Like, it's weird that that's a good thing to be, like, if I had been listening to myself say this 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, 14 months ago, that would just sound insane. But now it's like Christmas Day every day, because I can go more than 5 kilometers from my house. Hooray! So those mountains that I constantly was looking at from outside my kitchen window, I can actually go there now. I can't really go much further than that, but I can still go there. I can hike up them, I can hike down them, and it's all legal. Hooray! Thanks for indulging me there while I released my inner child HiiKER. He's been dying to get out there for a long time, and yeah, the last few months have been torturous at the best of times. Not to sound too cataclysmic, but yeah, it's been tough. So I'm glad I'm able to get out, and yeah, I just had to let him go for a moment or two. How have you been? How has the last 2 weeks been on you? Have you been hiking? Have you been camping? Have you been pooping in the woods? Embracing your inner outdoor person? This episode of the podcast, I'm joined by the CEO and founder of Atom Packs, Tom Gale. Atom Packs are pretty successful in my eyes backpack manufacturer. So they make ultralight backpacks. Some of their gear is fantastic. You see a lot of people using them on these long trails, but even for multi-day backpacking trips, their bags are fantastic. And if you're trying to hike ultralight, these guys they know what they're doing. There's something really interesting about this and special about this interview. Probably not for good reasons. Tom is a fantastic storyteller, and he has an amazing story, and that's one part. He's also a gentleman, and we get on really well, and I've since been speaking to him, and we have I suppose forming a bit of a friendship, I would hope. And also he's got this oddly mesmerizing deep voice. The guy is 6'7" or more, so you can imagine the guy's going to have a pretty giant voice and a giant presence about him. But the thing that's special about this is that a mere hour or two after we had our conversation, Tom was out mountain biking with his friends, and he mentions it throughout the podcast that it is another sport. He does actually mention it in a conversation that we had beforehand, that he was about to head out, so we're going to finish up at a certain time, and he's going to go out with his friends and do all that. But while he was out, he unfortunately had a pretty bad accident. So he came off his bike at some point in the trail, and he broke his neck, and it had to bring out the mountain rescue, the Keswick Mountain Rescue. So shout out to Keswick Mountain Rescue team that were pretty prompt getting there on time and getting him to the local hospital. He fractured his C7 vertebrae, and he has been wearing a collar for the next the following few months. I'm glad to say that he's well on the mend, and he's actually planning his next hiking trip. Speaking to him recently, he's planning on doing the Coast to Coast Trail up in St. Bees in the UK. But yeah, it's just funny how you are having this really good conversation with somebody, you're sharing laughs, sharing stories, and literally within a couple of hours the guy is in hospital with a broken neck. You never know when it's going to happen. That sounds a bit doom and gloom. But I guess it's just, it kind of reminded me just to say hello and tell people that you care about them. Obviously, myself and Tom, we only met each other, but if that had been a loved one, and that had happened to them like an hour or two, or if it was me in his shoes, I would like to have, those kind of conversations with people. But anyway, I don't want to drag on with this doom and gloom. I want to get into this interview because it's really good. Tom has an amazing story. Tom has hiked some of the biggest. He's a triple climber. He has hiked the AT, the PCT, and the CDT. He's also hiked the Tearoa, and he's hiked the South West Coast Path, I think twice. So the guy is a beast, and all along the way he's managed to come up with a fantastic business idea, and turn his passion for hiking and the outdoors into quite a successful business. And you'll hear also, like, he's managed to bag a trail buddy as a life partner. So yeah, look, I won't spoil the story too much more. Let's get into it. But first, a message from our sponsors. Over to you, Owen. Thanks, Owen. This podcast is powered by HiiKER, long distance hiking trails. Currently, we have mapped over 1,700 long distance hiking trails from all around the world. From walks in the woods, to mountain traverses, to nation-spanning through hikes, HiiKER has a trail for everyone who wants to truly explore the great outdoors. Download the HiiKER app for free in your app store now, or head over to hiiker.app to discover your next great adventure. Excellent stuff. Thank you very much for your continued help, Owen and all the team at HiiKER. So without further ado, my interview with Tom Gale. You can't spell Atom without Tom. Atom Pack's CEO and founder, Tom Gale. Welcome to the show. I appreciate you taking some time out of your very hectic schedule ahead of a busy 2021 hiking season. Fingers crossed. So, Tom, you are one of these people that have an extensive hiking career or CV, whatever way you want to put it, and you've managed to turn it into a business for yourself. We can get obviously we want to talk about Atom Packs at some point. Very successful backpack business, growing. But you might just tell me about the trails that you've done over the years, and then we can kind of see where did the Atom Packs come along that journey.
So I think I came to hiking sort of, I suppose, kind of by accident, really. I was hiking. I was when I was about 2008. I discovered the Appalachian Trail through Bill Bryson's book, A Walk in the Woods, and I've always been a fan of Bill Bryson. So one day I just randomly picked up this book, and I got sort of five or 10 pages in, and I realized that I hadn't really been paying attention. So I had to go back, because he started talking about the AT, and I was like, what is this AT that he's talking about? So I went back to the start of the book and reread it, and then came up with the idea. It was like my best friend Colin at the time, his dad was terminally ill with prostate cancer, and we've been thinking about things that we could do to raise money for his cause for Cancer Research UK. And our friends had just done a big bike ride, so we were like, well, we love riding bikes, but we can't really do a big bike ride because Nick and Chris have already done that. So we were just like, I asked him about the AT, and he was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. and I think we had about 12. I think I asked him in October 2007. So we had a year and a bit to plan, which, I think is probably too much time to plan for a through hike, especially when you don't know what you're doing. The internet's, there wasn't the same support, like the forums and stuff. There wasn't as much information about it then.
Or a handy mobile phone app either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hiked. So we ended up scraping together a bunch of gear, and I think I bought every single piece of kit twice at least, and then replaced with lighter versions. And even when I was on the trail, I ended up replacing nearly everything. And that's often the way. I think very often, I very often say to people, it doesn't matter how many spreadsheets you write, like nothing's going to focus your mind about what should be in your bag more than carrying it up and over like a 7,000 foot mountain. Especially like, at the start of the Pacific Crest Trail where you're having to make water choices. Like, it's like, right, I can either have a really heavy bag and dry camp, or I can, I ended up buying quite a lot of extra kit on that trip, but there's nothing like through hiking to focus the mind.
Yeah. And did you have the like an ultralight mind about you when you were doing that, or was it just like, let's carry enough to survive?
Well, I mean, I think with anything unknown, I truly didn't know what through hiking was going to be until I went out to go and do it. And so I think every hiker, you end up packing your fears. I had like this enormous, I think at Springer Mountain at the start of the Appalachian Trail, I had like, I think my bag weighed 45 pounds, so like over 20 kilos. Excuse me, there or thereabouts. So like, it quickly became, we were carrying like 8 liters of water each. The Appalachian Trail is the wettest trail in the world. There's water absolutely everywhere. And I ended up just carrying way too much, and you quickly learn. But we did some training hikes on the Southwest Coastal Path. I grew up in Plymouth, which is right on the coast, and the coastal path went right past my best friend's house, Colin, and he we just decided like, right, we'll just walk down, we'll try and get to my uncle's got a farm right down at the very bottom of Land's End. He's like the last farm on the south coast just before it becomes the sort of western and then the northern coast of Cornwall. So we were like, let's try and get down there. And so we sort of set off and did that as our sort of training walk. And we had like tranches and 8 stoves and like just everything. There was as much stuff like hanging off our bags as there was attached to in the bags themselves. So it was like your classic Duke of Edinburgh experience.
Yeah, it just sounded like a couple of Frisian cows walking out to pasture.
yeah, exactly. But it was great, and what a better way to learn. I always sort of say that very valuable training. It's all good training.
But I've even heard, like, I haven't done the Southwest Coast Path myself, but even a number of people have said it's a tough trail to do as well, because it's just constantly undulating hills.
It's either up, down, or sideways. Like, it's incredibly indirect. The coast has this way of, you see, the North Coast is far worse. It's really undulating. It's in and out. There's loads of headlands and stuff. So actually, you might only be sort of 10 miles from somewhere, but actually by the time you take into account all the ins and outs and ups and downs you need to do, it's actually sort of 20 odd miles. So yeah, it's a great trail. It's absolutely brilliant. It's really good. I think there's a really good case for yo-yoing that trail as well, like hiking from one end to the other and then turning back and going back the other way, because the view behind you is very often, you don't see it. You're not experiencing it in the same way as you are going forwards. So all these little coves and beaches and things that you'd see down into. It's a beautiful trail. It's really, really cool. And it's right there. The only annoying thing, as with all hiking in the UK, is you can't wild camp legally or easily. So you have to be quite imaginative about the way you do that.
I spoke to I'm not sure if you're familiar with Gale Muller, who also did the Appalachian Trail a number of years ago, but there last year she did the Southwest Coast Path, and one of the toughest things about it, apart from the wild camping and the rough terrain, was that you're walking through towns constantly, And I suppose particularly within COVID area, it's pretty tough. But you're walking through these towns, so it's hard to kind of get away far enough to even do a wild camp and kind of follow Leave No Trace guidelines and just stay in a farmer's yard or something like that.
I mean, we only had one. I only had one issue where I camped on a farmer's land, and I got up early to hike out, and he was like driving. It was clear that there's like, because of where I was, that I'd slept on his land, and he sort of gave me a bit of a telling off. But I also had like a bag of rubbish that I'd collected, and so I sort of, we left it okay. But I think the main issue with the farmers is you're going up against their insurance liability. So you get trampled by a cow, it's on them. Mm-hmm. So that's the big problem. It's the towns that are everywhere. I hiked it both times in winter. I've done two. I did one like 2/3 route around the coast path, and then one complete. Both times I did it. One time I did it in very, very late. Well, it was like February, March, and then I also did it October, November, December that year. Wow. So it was like I finished on Christmas Eve, and it was freezing, and just it was dry. Like I don't remember it raining that much, but it was just like just constantly having wet feet. You're just walking through dewy fields all the time. So and then just the draw of pubs, the smell of wood smoke as you're walking through the towns, and just we came to realise that if we stopped and drank pints of beer, we generally have a pretty terrible afternoon. But pots of tea was the way to do it. You go and have a pot of tea and warm up for sort of half an hour, and then blaze back out again.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's really difficult when you go in to not want that cozy pint. In a nice little country pub. It's I've fallen victim to it myself. When you got another 10 kilometers or like 5 or 6 miles to do after like 1 or 2 pints, it's not great. It's okay for the first. It's okay for the first maybe 20 minutes or so where you're singing and laughing, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got to climb this. I've a few times got sort of vortex into sort of pubs and restaurants and things, and it does make it very difficult, especially in the winter, to get back out on track. Yeah. That's definitely one of the tougher parts of the coastal path. But on the one of the good bits is that you can pretty much resupply every day. You can grab ice creams and pasties, and every few hours you can have something to eat, which. If you're looking for a wilderness experience, is a bit of a problem. But did you come across the very highly technical ferry system that they had, which I was informed about, where you lift a little white paddle or something like that?
Oh, there's so we ended up I think around Falmouth. I think Falmouth is where there's the main issue, because Falmouth has got like 5 huge tributaries, 5 huge estuaries coming into it, and so the coast actually goes across. The coast path goes across a lot of those. I think both times I hiked, it was off season, so actually the ferries were an absolute nightmare. So I ended up having to hike around, or catch I did catch one taxi for like 20 miles just to get me to the other side, because again it was like. Just the logistics of hiking in the winter. But I do remember there being some signal system of like blowing a horn or like hoisting a flag. Yeah.
So that was your first long distance trail, and you did it more or less. You did it twice in 1 year.
Yeah, so sorry, we ended up getting a bit hijacked onto the coastal path. So actually we ended up hiking, Colin and I ended up hiking about 200 miles of the coastal path in preparation for doing the Appalachian Trail. And so we walked, probably for about 14 days or so. And I just remember like that feeling of, that was my first ever like overnight. Like, I always think if you can camp for, like, you're not really truly hiking until you've camped for 3 nights in the same clothes, like on the same trail. So you've done like night out camp, you know, just like, and that once you get sort of 5 days from home and suddenly realize like, God, I'm 100 miles away. Like, you know, I've done, like, I was connecting all these places from my childhood around the coast that, you know, I'd visited on the train, and, you know, I was amazed at how easy it was and how exciting it was and how continuously changing it was. Like, and I remember my buddy got injured and we ended up getting off trail for a few days, and I just wanted to get back and just see how much further we could go, you know, like, yeah, and I really felt that draw of just like this ever-reaching horizon. I was just completely addicted from the beginning. Just like I was just like, more of this, give me more of this. Like, yeah, I just couldn't get enough of it. And but yeah, I mean, we were hiking out with like tins of beans. Just, I mean, you sort of can do that on the coast path, but you're in town like so often that you can throw things away, but yeah, once we're onto the Appalachian Trail, the idea of like a 5-day resupply, like, remember we landed in Atlanta, and the guy from the hostel took us to a place to get a resupply, and you know, my food bag was like, I mean, it was tiny. You know, I mean, now the main reason why I carry lightweight kit is so I can, you know, I'm 6'7" and, you know, 220 pounds or 100 kilos. So like, you know, I eat a lot of food. Like, you know, it takes and my main anxiety in the world when it comes to hiking is being hungry. Like, I'm utterly useless if I'm hungry. And yeah, so, but yeah, we did not get our food right on the Appalachian Trail. And I think, you know, even towards the end of the trip, I still wasn't eating enough. You know, I lost a lot of weight on that trip because I just didn't, you know, I was just living off ramen noodles, and we didn't have very much money. So like, ramen are great, but you've got to supplement them with, you know, cheese, potatoes, bacon, whatever else you can carry out. Like, yeah, I definitely found I was just really hungry all the time. I don't think I've never had hiker hunger quite like I had on the Appalachian Trail. Right. Okay. But it's also just utterly brutal. Like, that trail is, you're just rotting. Like, yeah, everything, you know, I've never been, I used to play a lot of rugby as a kid. Like, there were always the sweaty kids. Like, you know, there's always the kids that sweat, and I just didn't sweat. You know, I played second row, so I had like my hand up two people's crotches, around one head in between two other people's asses, and like, you know, I was just amazed that people could sweat this much. And anyway, I got out on the Appalachian Trail, and it was just pouring off me because it's so humid, it doesn't evaporate. So you're just sweating, and it just builds up and builds up. And like, you know it's warm when like your shoulders are sweating and just everything. And it just...
Yeah, and you're also covered in clothes, and you're probably wearing like a fleece, or you're wearing like a lot more clothes than you would be wearing when you're playing rugby.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, my wife's parents has been out to pick her up. She's a triple crowner as well, and her parents have come to meet her on each trip, and they said that nothing on the Appalachian Trail, or nothing from the other two trips, the Continental Divide Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, compares to how smelly a car full of hikers was from the Appalachian Trail. Like, it was just like utterly disgusting, because it's wet as well. So it's like, you know, you're in the woods, it's raining quite a lot, like it's humid, it's, you know, you get these big storms that roll through in the afternoons, and like, you just never really get the chance to dry out. And like, I don't remember there being that many. Like, now I know that I just jump in and swim every opportunity I can. I get in creeks, rivers, lakes, whatever. Whereas like, I think because I was 21 on the Appalachian Trail, we were sort of very much buying into that bravado of like, how disgusting can we be on this trip? Like, I think I had maybe 17 showers, I think, in 6.5 months. I think the number 17 is ringing a bell. So, but you know, there's always guys like that on trail, and some women. who just kind of go, yeah, I'm just going to get this opportunity to get as hairy and as stinky as I can possibly be.
Yeah, like you're not really going to get a huge amount of opportunities in quote unquote real life to lean into that kind of level of body.
We got kicked out of one restaurant on I want to say it was somewhere in New Jersey. There was a pizza restaurant that you could hike to, and we got in there. It was like a 3-mile hike down this highway, and we got up early in the morning and smashed down there to get there for lunchtime. And it was, blazing hot sunny day. There was no shade outside at all. And the guy let us go in, let us place his order, and he was like, "You can't sit in the restaurant. You have to sit outside." I just remember just like sitting outside in the blazing sun, trying to eat this huge hot calzone, and I was incredibly happy about the calzone, but just so unhappy about the situation. Like, we all felt like terribly in like we'd had this terrible injustice done to us, but I guess in reality we probably all 6 of us did smell pretty terrible. But yeah, it was just like, really, there's no debating this. We're sitting outside, just on the street.
I really have to appreciate and commend those trail angels that come out and pick people up and bring them into towns and all that. Like, they're constantly like getting, so many different auras or aromas into their car. They'll never be able to sell those cars.
Yeah. There's this lady on the Pacific Crest Trail called Terry Anderson, and she runs Casa de Luna, which is one of the like famous trail hostels there, and she loved it. Like, when I met her, I went to like fist bump her, and she was just, I was proper stinking, just got off trail, hadn't showered for like 5-6 days or whatever, and she was just like, "Oh, don't be silly." She slapped my hand away and was just like, "Bring it in, I love the smell of you guys," like that, and she just buried her face in my neck, and I was just like, "Oh my god." But it's funny how my wife's backpack. I've got her backpack from the Continental Divide Trail. It's a ULA circuit, and it smells amazing to me. She'd be the first to admit that she sweats a lot. Salt stains on her shirt and everything, and the smell of her pack now, it's really, really nostalgic. It's like an animal. I think that it's funny how that's what your animal self smells like. I don't think you realize until you're 3 or 4 months into a trip, like how heavily perfumed our society is. Everything from carpet freshness to room sprays to even the detergents that we wash our clothes with. Like, yeah, you learn, like, whenever you pass it, you'd be like 5 days into a trip, like 100-mile section, and you'd suddenly start getting close to a trailhead where day hikers were coming down the other end, and like as you walk by, just the smell of them, it really lingers for like hundreds of meters on the trail. And you realize like the trail of stench that you're probably leaving behind you. Yeah. But yeah, we used to kind of play a game and we try and guess like how long somebody had been out on trail by like how they smelled as we came by, and just be like, yeah, it's a day hiker.
You can kind of judge that by I suppose there's lots of different levels of that game too, where you can have like the clothes they're wearing, how dirty their clothes, or how dirty their face or hair is.
Yeah.
Because like I've kind of just watched from afar of people doing the PCT and the AT, and you can see from the start like how clean and fresh they look, and then by halfway they've torn the sleeves off their t-shirt. Their shorts are now super short because they're just like you can have as little clothes as possible at the moment. Even just by looking at on social media, like, you're halfway now.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, you can spot a through hiker from a mile away, especially when you're on those trails. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it, is like you can, walk into a restaurant, restaurant's full of people, you spot 2 other hikers that you've never met, but, they just wave you over to their table and you come and sit down, and you have this commonality in the fact that you're both you're all pitching yourself against this utterly absurd thing, this completely pointless exercise of trying to walk across a continent, or you know, however lot far it is that you're trying to walk, and you know what unites you is the trail. Like, so you know, I remember sitting down with a, you know, very conservative couple of people, and you know, that he was a rocket scientist and she was I can't remember he was an actual rocket scientist. He did something with lasers or something, but like, you know, and yet, you know, we sat and had a meal together, and like, you know, and in our normal lives we'd never ever had any cause to meet or let alone share a meal, but yet, you know, like, we had the biggest hug when I last saw them. You know, that was, we knew we weren't going to see them again. Like, yeah, so that's the kind of wonderful thing. It's like, you know, this great sort of
unity.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So you did the Appalachian Trail in 2008.
2009. That was, yeah.
And
it started in April, finished in October.
And then at what point did you go straight to the other US trails? Or did you do the TA?
No, so I had a bit of a hiatus for a few years as I was trying to. I basically went to the Appalachian Trail with a view of, when I came back, I was like, right, I'm going to go to university. So that was sort of my kind of gap year. But when I came back off the AT, I'd sort of realised that I wanted the outdoor to sort of be my life, really. I was like, however I can do this for money, like, I want this to be it. And so I learned about. Took a couple of years, but yeah, I came back and I ended up getting a job in a cheese shop in Bath. And like, ended up just having a great time in Bath for a few years, and then found my way to sort of working an outdoor apprenticeship that would kind of led me down the path of becoming like a certified mountain instructor, so I could take people out into the mountains and stuff. But yeah, so just before starting that apprenticeship, I then went off and hiked the Southwest Coastal Path. So I ended up doing about I think I did about 900 miles on the coastal path that year, because I did like just over half of it, and then got injured, and then went and did like my sort of 6 or 7 month apprenticeship, and then at the end of that, I then went back to the coastal path again. This time, my buddy Cody, who I'd met on the Appalachian Trail, and he'd never seen the sea before. He like grew up in Kansas, and so he came out and hiked the coast path with me, and then when I got back off that trip, I was into another apprenticeship. This time up in very near where we are now, actually, up in Keswick. And yeah, so it was so that was like the next sort of year and a bit until sort of 2013. I headed out to the TRO.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's a different experience altogether.
Yeah, so I was. You interviewed Carl Litter, is it?
Impala.
So I actually hiked the year after him, and I remember sort of reading his writing in a lot of the trail logs and stuff, and just remember just his writing's like graffiti. It's like, you know, you can really spot it. He always left like quite a hefty entry in the trail register. So it was really interesting kind of seeing his experience. So yeah, I think he hiked 12, 13, and I hiked 2013 to 2014, and I think by that point there'd probably been fewer than like 200 people had tried to through hike that trip in total. Wow. So, you know, a lot of these trails, they basically, the planning authority for the TRO just went, right, where are their trails? Let's try and link them all up. So, you know, in the North Island especially, you'd have, you know, 2 days on a road followed by like 1 day of wilderness-ish, and then like another day on a road to link together all these little sections of bush, which was amazing. But some of those trails just hadn't been walked for a really long time. So like either that they were like diabolically signposted or in really, really terrible conditions. So like, you know, I remember this one section outside of this town called Taquiti, and we had a pretty terrible time. So like we were in there, and the guy the guy from the hostel was just there was a guy at a campsite, and he was just being so incredibly rude to us that we were just like, right, let's get out of here. There's a campsite in 4K. Let's just go and grab some. We'll grab some nice stuff, and we'll hike this 4K, and we'll take like a near zero mileage day. And dude, that 4K took us like 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
It was just like we ended up like in like tit deep gorse bushes and just like sliding down ravines, and just like we were just woefully not prepared. We had like I had like a carrier bag full of food with me. It was just like that trip. It would be lovely now. I don't know. Would it be lovely? There was so much adventure to it because you just never knew like what each day was going to entail. Like, I had note. There were trail notes for the trip, but I'd put them onto a Kindle. So you could. So that was my sort of. I was like, there's no way I'm carrying like 500 sheets of paper. So I was like, I'll I worked out the Kindle up until the Kindle broke. That was kind of how I managed it. But it would give you like mileages for the day, and it would be like, this is like a 20-kilometer day, and it will take maybe 6 hours. And then some days would be like 6 hours, but it would only be like 12 kilometers. Well, why is this day like? And sometimes like the Department of Conservation signs pointing into like where the next hut was or how long this section of trail was. It would be like, this trail, 12 kilometers, 6.5 hours. You can't go, no way is it going to take us 6.5 hours. And very often it wouldn't, but every now and again it would. You'd sort of emerge out of the woods like bleeding and angry, like 10 hours later, just like, what the hell was that? I mean, it was absolutely amazing, like a total sufferfest. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it because it was very similar to some other trips that I've done where it was a real the New Zealand bush is quite a serious place. Like you can get very lost, and you can get yourself into a lot of danger or into a lot of trouble quite quickly. Just because you're near a road doesn't necessarily mean that it's a safe space. I think there were 3 hikers on or around the Tiro that died the year that I was out there.
Wow.
I think it was 2 section hikers. One guy just disappeared, and then there was another guy who fell. So it is a serious place. I think with the apps now, it's possibly a little bit safer, but for like navigation, it's possibly a little bit easier. But definitely a serious place. But that kind of just made it so much fun. It was.
I suppose the adrenaline is pumping, and you're trying to smile through something that goes across your life.
Well, once we got into the South Island, it was amazing. Like the North Island, I think, especially because there was no hostel networks. A lot of people didn't know what the trail was. I had one lady came out to us just outside of Palmerston North, this town in the sort of the bottom half of the North Island. This lady came out. We were walking past the end of her garden. She was like, "You're like the 10th person that walked past this week." She was like, "What is this? Like, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, there's an end-to-end trail that goes right past the end of your garden." It was like, if I were you, I would put a fridge down here with some beers and like a microwave. Just charge people like $20 because this trail's going to blow up. Yeah. And I think now there are a lot more kind of there's much more like there's a much better support network out there for the hikers, which it's especially in the North Island. It's so densely populated up there that a lot of the time you're finishing a day just on a roadside or on a golf course, or like you kind of go, well, where am I going to sleep? Like we did have one incident where we camped out on a golf course, and at about 3 o'clock in the morning, the sprinklers came on. And it was such like a beautiful night that we just pitched the inner of the tent. And so like 3 in the morning, we're just getting jetted with all these.
Oh God, yeah, typical.
But yeah, so it was a real adventure. It was very, very very cool. I would definitely hike the Tiro again. I might give the North Island a miss, but I'd probably hike the South Island northbound if I ever found myself with like 3 months to kill wanting to do some hiking. I think that would be a great way to spend it.
But I suppose even since we started with HiiKER, we have just discovered the amount of trails, predominantly in the South Islands, that New Zealand has. It's some incredible hiking trails. You can also link together as well. So like one trail will end and there's another one like 4 or 5 kilometers down the road where you can either road hike or grab a taxi or a bus. But it's a pretty populated area that you can actually make your way to the next trail.
Yeah, and the South Island's amazing, and the hut network in New Zealand is utterly incredible. You have these, some of them are like houses. They're just way out in the middle of nowhere. I think there's 1,000 huts. There's 1,000 Department of Conservation run huts. You can buy a hut pass for like $60. I think it was when the year that we did it, for 6 months. So it's like $10 a month, and then you can stay in all these huts. I mean, you're allowed to stay in each one for like 20 days or something. It's like the maximum amount that you can stay in each one of these huts. Very often they've got a toilet, running water, a place to do some washing up. And, some of the nicer ones have actually got, counters to cook on and things. You don't need to worry about predators out there. So it's like, you can just, it was amazing. You could stay at a different one. You could have a 3-year trip linking all those huts together, staying at a different one every night.
Wow.
It's an amazing country. I don't know how well they're coping with the amount of people that are heading towards the Tiro. Mm-hmm. I think having 1,000+ hikers a year heading out that way, especially in the areas where it's densely populated. Mm-hmm. I think, human waste and just hikers in general can be, it's not in the same way like the PCT and the Appalachian Trail, kind of like party trails. I think because they're largely wilderness, they're pretty well set up to do that. Whereas the Tiro, you're very much on other people's land, and you're kind of they're permitted. A lot of it's permissive trails, so it's like you're allowed to be here as long as you behave yourself. And so I think there has been some contentious issues, but the trail's still young as well. It's not yet fully formed. So hopefully as time goes on, they'll sort that out. But the New Zealander way is very much like, if you ask for it, I'll give you anything. But if you try and take something from me, I'll come after you with a gun. I think they're very, they're the most hospitable people on the planet, as long as you're respectful, which I think can sometimes be an issue with some hikers. Can be slightly sort of entitled in a sense. That's definitely something that I've experienced on some of the longer trails. They kind of go, "Oh, I'm doing this special thing," and it's like, yeah, you are doing a special thing, but you're also the 100th person that's been doing this same special thing this week. Like a lot of the PCT towns, there are some towns that are quite anti-hikers, and the ones that are clever and need the money, they'll embrace the hiking community, because there's always, any one time, for 10 weeks of the year, there'll be 100 hikers in town at any one point, and they're all spending money. So it's like,
and that's one of it's the double-edged sword of these of hiking, I suppose, in general, but more so these long distance trails, where like we touched on in the podcast before with other guests, the impacts that hikers have, while hikers, generally are very, environmental conscious. They are for the most part conscious of people's land and respecting that. But you're always going to have a few bad seeds. You're always going to have some impact, whatever it is. So, raising awareness of these trails, like we are, like you are, through either hiking them or having an app for them or putting up, some sort of information about it. Raising awareness obviously bring an influx of people, but then you are going to just increase that percentage of bad seeds. But hopefully there will be some payoff in that. There's a better economical return for these towns. there's more awareness that's put into these, as you said, anti-hiker towns or areas where there's less kind of hospitality for them, where you kind of show them or educate them on how they can profit from this.
Absolutely.
And how can help the area.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you come into like a Wrightwood on the Pacific Crest Trails, one that definitely stands out. It's just like they've clearly got together as a town and been like, the hikers aren't going away, so let's make this place as comfortable for them as possible. And so you'll see signs up saying welcome to the PCT hikers and all this, and just like the general store's got like a big covered area out the front where you can sort your resupply, and there's charging points everywhere, and there's Wi-Fi, and like it just makes it if you invite hikers, they'll come. But yeah, I think sometimes on these long trips, it's easy to feel quite like it's just me. Like, I'm just going to go and hang out in this pizza restaurant for too long because it's storming outside, and actually take a table away from somebody that could I'm just going to eat one slice of pizza and stay here for 6 hours. And sometimes you might be the 30th person that's done that month. So I think it's important to be really aware, especially on these more popular trails, that actually you're not this. You are one of many thousands of hikers that's going through that town, and I always try and be. You're only as good as like you're paving the way for the next hiker that comes through behind you. So it's you're going to be the guy they remember. So it's like, just try and make sure you're always really thankful, and pay your way, try and tip if you can afford it, and just all of this, it all goes to sort of making a difference.
If one person's making a bad name for it, you need to equalize that.
Yeah. I mean, the Pacific Crest Trail is getting a bit crazy. Like, when after TRO, when I was hiking PCT in 2015, and actually going from the TRO where I met nobody, it was just me and my then hiking partner, to suddenly going to, I think we met 24. I want to say 24 other through hikers on the whole time on the TRO. On the first day on the PCT, I met like 60 people.
Wow.
And, in the first 20 miles, it was just like, and you do eventually, the bubble does eventually stretch out, and you do go for days at a time without seeing other groups. But like, you're pretty safe in the knowledge on the Pacific Crest Trail that if you sit down for an hour, at least one or two other through hikers are going to come past you. So like, which is kind of nice in a way. Like, if that's what you want. I found on the PCT, I was kind of wanting a bit more of like a wilderness. I don't know. I found it quite noisy and quite like, I possibly wanted to have less people. I don't know. I think especially going from the TRO to the Pacific Crest Trail, where there was just the sheer amount of people was just a little intimidating.
Yeah. That's the other side of that sword that I just said. It's a different thing you're going to have on some of these trails, like the PCT. I'm sure ever since Wild, the movie, they have said, the PCTA have said that the number of applications for permits just went through the roof ever since that movie came out, or ever since the book came out, and then even more so since the movie came out.
Yeah, I mean, they say the same for. I think that there's always a bit of a spike, and then it sort of starts to level off. But I mean, like, through hiking is one of the best things on the planet. Like, why wouldn't you want to go out and do that? And we're all there for the same reason, whether you've read a book or watched a movie or like whatever the reason why you're there. The important thing is that you're there and you're doing it, and you're experiencing this incredibly special, beautiful thing that will be with you forever. That's I've had 33 years on this planet now, and I remember 7 of them really, really well. And those are the years that I thru hiked. The rest of them are all kind of just a bit of bit of a hazy blur, really. So I have these highlights of 2009, 2011, 2013 into 14, 2015, 2017. These are the years that I went off and did at least 6 months of hiking, and so there's a certain amount of like on the PCT our year there was like people kind of coming up to you and being like, "Oh, are you book or movie? Did you read the book or did you watch the movie? Why are you here?"
Right.
And that was all to do with Wild, and what does it matter? The main reasons that you're there, so yeah. But anyway, so that's
okay.
my philosophy on it.
It's a very healthy one. I think a lot of people that are listening to this would think it's a very healthy approach to it, and I think most hikers would think the same thing as well. Everybody is doing whatever length or distance of a hike you're doing it for your own reasons, and it's a beautiful thing. And so the fondest memories that I have are spent dragging a 15 to 20 kilo bag up a mountain, having the best time of my life, even though it's the worst time of my life. But it's
you got around your sandwiches, man. Yeah,
exactly. Or in my case, pizza. Is it linked to trauma? Is that what it is? Is it that type 2 fun where we're just like, this is? I'm sure. Yeah. This sucks, but this is
a my somebody who was chatting to me recently. So my old housemate just skied across Norway.
Wow.
Last winter, and he's just like, I think at the time he was just like, this is the most diabolically awful thing. The last winter was terrible. There were just storms, and it was either really snowy or really windy. It was never calm, settled conditions, and he was on like touring skis in like 8 foot of snow, so he was just like having a terrible time. But the second he finished it, he was just like, "Yeah, I'll do that again." It only takes like a day, and suddenly you don't remember any of the bad bits. I always, the Appalachian Trail. We talked about like the amount that you just sweat and just rot on that trip. Like you end up with these sores all over your back, and I've only ever experienced this on the Appalachian Trail, where you've just ended up with like patches of flesh on your body that's just been rubbed raw by your backpack, and that is insanely uncomfortable and incredibly painful. And to get up and do 20 miles every day with adding loading a fully loaded backpack onto these like sore raw patches of skin, mate, it's just an absolute sufferfest. But then you kind of go, it only takes a couple of weeks once you get back, and you're like, oh yeah, that was really good.
You're just flicking through your Instagram feed or flicking through your photographs. You're like, oh yeah, that was amazing. I'm totally blanking the fact that I had a swollen ankle. I was starving, I was cold, but I was sweating at the same time. So
it's all character building, isn't it?
Absolutely. I suppose we've spoken to people about the PCT and before, so you did PCT in 2015, and then I would imagine you closed off the Triple Crown in 2017. Is that what you're?
Yeah. So I sort of while I was working in the cheese shop in 2009, I sort of said to myself, right, if I can complete the Triple Crown by the time I'm 30, then I was living with a group of guys who were all a bit older than me, and they were all turning 30 around the time that I was sort of 21, 22. I sort of thought to myself, like, oh yeah, if I can do the Triple Crown by the time I'm 30, that would be great. But there's always been this friction in my life between what I want to do, which is through hike or go snowboarding, or ride my mountain bike. But for the last 4 years of the 20 teens or the 2010s, I was torn between going and doing winter seasons or going and fulfilling some, I don't know, however we're programmed growing up, like you feel like you should be participating in society in some way. I should be achieving something, or I should be going to university, or I should be settling down, I should be being an adult and growing up and doing all of this stuff. And actually, these moments on trail were incredibly free, but then you really have to pay for those in shutting down your life for 6 months and, or working really hard for 8 months to go and have a 4-month trip somewhere, and you have to sell everything or put everything into storage, and without either incredibly supportive parents or some flexible job that you keep coming back to, it can be really difficult. 1 through hikes one thing, but to go and do numerous ones, but yeah, so part of me was like, if I can turn 30, if I can complete the Triple Crown by the time I'm 30, and I turned 30 in 2018, and in amongst all of this, after finishing the tier, I started building backpacks, and I sort of had this stupid idea to like build a couple of packs, and not that I knew how to sew or how backpacks were made. I just did, I'm 6'7", I've got a 24-inch back, so nothing ever fit me properly. So one day I was just like, I'll design scratched out some simple designs and built a backpack, and that sort of then became this ongoing problem that I had, whereby I just couldn't stop doing it. I was like, I wouldn't even look, I'd finish a pack, stuff it, stick it on my back and be like, it could be better, and I just throw it on a pile and just immediately start building the next one. And this kind of went on and on and on until, so on the Pacific Crest Trail, we were actually testing packs that I'd made, which astoundingly survived. I'm not really too sure how, because they were pretty poorly sewn, but wonky stitches are sort of just about as strong as straight ones, pretty much. But like we did have a few sort of explosions, but like the great thing about having built it yourself is you could like you knew how to repair it properly. So in the interim time between the Pacific Crest Trail and Continental Divide, I'd actually been working a lot on these designs and trying to become a better sewer, a better sewing machinist. And so I've done a bit of work with another company, and like I thought, it was like, right, I really want to, I feel like this idea of this company that I want to start is I think I can do it. Like, I think the packs are good enough to start selling them. But I was like, I knew that with the Continental Divide still somewhere in my future, I knew that I was going to have to go and do that trip at some point. Like, it was an itch that had to be scratched. So, I think I was just like, right, I'll do the CDT in sort of 2017. 2016 was a really rough year. Like a really long-term relationship ended, and a couple of people died, and like it was just like rough, and it ended up being I was like living in a van and like just desperately unhappy. There was a lot of it's quite clear now that there was a lot of like I was under a lot of mental strain, or putting myself under a lot of mental strain, and then the whole year culminated with the death of my sister's child, and so I was just like, everything just blew up. I was just like, right, got in the van, put everything in the van from Cumbria, and just drove down to my sister's and just lived outside her house for like a couple of months, where I was just there supporting her and her family and her other child, and then I was just like, after sort of 4 months of this, I was just like, I have to get out of here. Like, I could just feel that I was just like, I'm gonna explode. Like, I know that I've got like a pretty considerable breakdown either happening or somewhere in my future. So I was just like, I'm out of here. I gotta just get out and hike. And Donald Trump in the US had like just trashed. Nobody was going to America, so flights were super cheap. So like one afternoon, I was just like sitting in my van, and I saw that I could buy a return flight to LAX for like 300 quid, and I was just like, screw it, and I just hit the button, and that was 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks to plan the hike, so I just focused on building. I built a few packs, and then handed out a couple to other hikers that were on the CD. So I think I gave away 4 packs, and then was just like, right, so now I can get sort of 1,200 miles of testing done on like one of the toughest trails in the world. I can get the hell out of here for a bit, and just go and sort of stretch my legs out on trail. And yeah, I planned like the first week of the hike. Got everything sent to Lordsburg in New Mexico. It's this town. Everyone stays at the Econo Lodge, which is like this very hiker-friendly hostel in this town, or motel rather. And so I just like 36-hour journey. It was like 18 hours on a plane, and then 14 hours on a train. I arrived in Lordsburg, just like no one knew I was coming. I was just like, what am I doing? Like, I just, I remember just sitting there on the train, just thinking like, watching like buses whiz by in the window. Just like, I'm doing this again. I cannot believe I'm doing this again. And then it was like a 4-hour like off-road bouncy ride, driven by this lunatic called Radar, who's one of the trail helpers that sort of shuttles people to the start of the trip. And then that was it. It was just like, I planned enough I had the maps for the first week, and then I was like, I'll do everything else from trail. If you know how to through hike, you know how to through hike. Like, I had all the kit. Like, I knew how to take care of myself in the desert. And a through hike is like an extended experience of 4 or 5 months, of which there's quite a lot of logistics. And if you try and take on all those logistics before you head out there, actually, how do you, it's too much in a way. Like, you're trying to become an expert on something that you know nothing about. Like, every trail is different. So actually, when's the best time to plan a trip on the CDT? Well, actually, all I need is 7 days food and the maps, and then I can get out on trail and then plan the rest of it while I'm here. Because now I'm on trail, I've got all the time in the world to think about it. Whereas, for a lot of people, especially people that live overseas, like the logistics of planning one of these hikes is so immense that it can be quite crippling and quite off-putting. And then actually, when they get on trail, they realise that half of what they read on forums is wrong, or doesn't relate to the way they hike, and it's not relevant to them in any way. So suddenly, it's all out the window on day 5. all this planning, like, oh yeah, I actually don't like Pop Tarts, but I've just sent 40 pounds of Pop Tarts to every trail town. Silly things like that. So like, I sort of find now, actually, if I am likely to do a trip like that, I'm probably going to go. I'll just be like, right, what do I need for the first week? I need 5-6 days food. I need sun cream. I need an umbrella. Let's just go. And then, I sort of, once I was out there, I then just started planning the rest of the trip, and it all sort of came into place. And I actually met my now wife. We met. We actually met on the Pacific Crest Trail in 2015. I was hiking with her, a guy from her hometown, and we bumped into each other on the CDT about sort of 250 miles in, and we ended up hiking the rest of the trail together. And we got married last spring, and she lives in England now. So
wow, that's it feels like you've just explained the plot of a movie to me, to be honest. Some sort of weird through hiking love story, coming of age movie.
we had to we did sort of 3 years of back and forth with her, kind of hopping across. She wasn't legally able to work in this country, so she'd have to like go home, save up a load of money, come back, live here for 4 months, then go home for 6, and then come back for 4. So it was just like her life was just in flux, and it was like this. Sort of realised at some point that it was like, this is either going to be the death of us. Like, I can't keep asking her to put her life on hold. I now have a company to run. So we were just like last spring, it was just like, right, let's just get married and apply for the visa, and luckily it all came through for us. But I had to produce like, I think like 3 or 4 inches of paperwork because I run my own business. It's like, it was pretty intense. They needed like accounts and everything. It was all my bank statements going back like 3 years. It was a crazy time. But it's not cheap or easy to an important American, and nor should it be. Like she's a high value asset, and she's now working for us here, which is great. So
brilliant.
Okay.
Yeah. So you got an employee, you got a wife, and you got a hiking buddy, all in one go.
Yeah. So yeah, like I feel very lucky that there's not very many through Triple Crowners on the planet, and there's certainly not very many. Well, there's a growing number of female Triple Crowners, but the fact that I've managed to meet one is I do feel very lucky. Like, especially when through hiking, I've said this before. Through hiking is one of the best worst things you can ever put in your life. Like, it's simultaneously kind of incredible, but then at the same time, it also gives you this opportunity to like peek through the curtain of like how life can be and how pure life can be. And I always think that's down to your sort of getting in touch with your animal self. You're hiking, you're living as humans have lived for millennia, like. And so I think that's why hiking is so pure and so beautiful, is because it's just incredibly rewarding and incredibly fulfilling, because you're scratching yourself in this primal place that that's how we evolved. That's what our souls know. And then suddenly it stops. And then you get to the end and it's just like, there you go, that was great. That was yesterday. You're not doing that anymore. Good luck. It's like, right, you're poor, you're thousands of miles from home, and you're chronically depressed. Like, see you later. People talk about the post-hike depression, and it is real and it is brutal. And for a lot of people, maybe the hike is the once in a lifetime thing. In which case, it is sad. You've had this one experience to do this one thing. Maybe you've taken a sabbatical from work, and suddenly it's like, right, that was it. That was my hike. That's never happening again. That was my dream. It was like, I think ever since the second trail, I've realized that, through hiking is in my life, and I will have it again. And so I now kind of want to step away from the trails. I like know that I'll be back again, so that makes it some comfort. And depending on how hard the trip is, sometimes you get to the end and you're just like, enough. Like the CDT, the last like 4 weeks on the CDT, we had like massive snowstorms. If you scroll right to the very bottom of my Instagram, you can see all these videos from the Continental Divide. That's just like, it was diabolically awful. We were hiking through like 3 foot of snow, just and it felt like for about 3 weeks we were about 200 miles away from the end of the trip. But like, there were all these wildfires, all of Montana was on fire, and like the end of the trail was shut. So Glacier National Park closed down, and yeah, so like, yeah, it was a real logistical nightmare getting to the end. And it constantly would be like, you'd suddenly think like, right, yeah, we can do it, and then suddenly you wouldn't be able to, and just like, wait, it was really, really difficult. So getting to the end of the CDT was just like, oh, thank God. You'd go home and have a heart attack. But I feel like with Gale Motown as my partner, she knows how that feels, and that's rare, because I think a huge part of that depression and that sort of that post-hike feeling is actually total alienation. You live in this bubble, this completely like abnormal segment of society, these like anti-citizens that are paving their way through across America, fueled by like PBR and peanut butter, and then suddenly that family or that support network disperses, and when you're on trail, you have this identity, you have this all the bits of your life that you worry about. What's my identity? Who am I? Where am I going? What's my purpose? All of that is taken care of, and then suddenly it all just evaporates. And so long now you are somebody that through hiked. You are no longer through hiking, and actually that can come with like I say, it's very alienating because nobody can understand, like, except those people that have been there and done it. Like, so to have a through HiiKER as my wife is absolutely amazing. We know now, like, I get it. She gets it. She gets it when I feel sad or when she feels sad, or like, if she suddenly said to me, like, right, I'm going away for 4 months, I'd be like, go do it. Like, I'm not going to stand in your way. Like, so it's great that we sort of know that about each other. Like, it's very cool.
Taking a big chunk of that trail back home with you, because I've gone on trips before, hiking trips with people before, and you do stay in contact with them. You might keep in contact over social media. You might meet up with them again at some point for another trip, but having that person there with you when you get back, and having them as obviously your partner in crime and whatever else is a very unique experience. I'm sure there's other people that have similar stories of meeting people out on trail and spending their lives with them, but it's a very rare thing to come by. So it's a beautiful thing.
I feel very lucky, really. Like, and it was actually I probably would have blazed straight through that town, and I'd probably completed the trail about 3 weeks, maybe a month quicker than I did without bumping into Gale. And I was kind of on a bit of a mission. This was the first time I was hiking on my own on the CDT. I'd done a lot of my other trips always with somebody. And so this trip was the first one that I'd ever gone to solo. And I think I was starting to clock like 30 miles a day. I was just starting to really push myself and see how far I could hike when I was on my own. So the town that she was in, she actually was hiking with one of the girls who had one of my test packs. So I'd given this girl, Nell, I'd given her a backpack to test, and she wasn't getting on very well with it. So I'd realised she was in this town, so I'd actually ducked into town to meet up with her. And sure enough, Motown was with her, and she was like, "Oh yeah, we met on the PCT last year or 2 years ago." And she caught my eye, and I caught hers, and she spent the next like 300 miles trying to slow me down, and then eventually did slow me down. But it was great.
I know your pain. I'm 6'4", and I've hiked with people. I have a daughter as well. I have a 11-year-old daughter who I've tried to bring out hiking with me before, and my stride is probably about 3 times hers.
Yeah.
But also hiking with anybody that's under 6 foot for me is just like, oh God, all right, okay, I'm gonna have to time here.
I've developed a pretty good client pace over the years. Like, I ended up working as a mountain guide, or not a mountain guide, but like a walking guide. And so you do develop this like pace of just like, right, we're walking at 2 miles an hour. It's just like, you just learn to slow yourself down. But Gale's like one of the strongest hikers I've ever known. Like, she could do 30-mile days every day, like with the heaviest backpack on the planet. Like,
so she didn't take the family name.
Gale, no, she hasn't yet. No, we decided, we were at the time, we were like, it was all a bit shotgun wedding. Like, I flew out and surprised her, and we literally had, I think I was there for 5 days, and it took 3 days to get the marriage license. So it was like, I had to ask her on the first day there, then we had to go and apply for the license, and then like, we just literally didn't have any time to think about it. So like, it was like, are you going to be Gale? Like, is this a decision we want to make now? So far, I think she is going to take my last name. But if I took hers, her dad is called Tom. So her dad is Tom Heim. Okay. So if I take her last name, I'd just be Tom Heim. So she's not happy with that. So yeah, we'll work on some sort of
like sliver of the universe on your own.
Yeah. We'll take the business.
Second name, and your dad's the same name. You're both through hikers.
Dude, yeah, it's bizarre, right? Like, Yeah.
So I suppose we've been chatting for a while here. This is probably
Sorry,
longer.
I'm a chatty man.
This is fantastic. It's been really good chatting to you. You've got some really good story. Apart from the company, obviously you're doing great with the company as far as I can see. I haven't had my hands on one of the bags yet, but I hope to at some point in the future. And I've heard only great news from anyone who's ever used one. But apart from the company, you said that you are going back to the trail at some point. Do you have your eyes set on any trail in particular?
I have every year since starting Out and Back. So we started in 2018. Every year I've thought that I'll hike the Arizona Trail in the spring. And then the spring comes by and I'm like, I can't do it now. I'll do it in the autumn. And then that's been happening for 3 years. Like, I'm lucky in that, I didn't have a base when I started the company. I didn't exist anywhere. I lived in a van. So I was like, I had a sewing machine in a workshop, in my dad's attic. So like, that's where I'd go to sew. But, I didn't really have a space. So I was like, right, well, where should I go? Like, to start the company. And I sort of thought, like, I knew Gale was coming over for the first 6 months of 2018. So I was like, well, if you're going to start a company, you might as well start it in the most beautiful place you can think of. And at least then, when I finish work, I'm already in a beautiful place. So I don't have to travel to go somewhere. Like, I knew that if this company was going to fail, it's because I wasn't going to be able to hike or ride my bike or do any of the things that I wanted to do. And I was like, I want minimal time between, leaving the office and, putting on my hiking shoes, so like quite a few times over the summer, I would bring my kit into work and I'd turn up in with my gear on, and then like at the end of a shift, I would just head out and go and hike out in the hills and go and camp out for the night, and then come back in the morning smelly and unwashed, and like, come and do another day's work. So like, I'm very lucky in that sense that, for me, I feel like a large part of that kind of wanderlust, or that sort of need for adventure, is kind of being taken care of in a sense. But Atom Packs is also, I like things that completely occupy my focus. Atom Packs probably occupies more of my focus than I'd like, but the main thing is that I'm busy. Like, I can't stand not being busy. So like, I can't stand not having like a purpose or something to work towards. So actually, the very same thing that satisfies me about through hiking, the business satisfies me in that sense as well. So like, as long as I find this interesting, I probably don't feel the same urge to go out and especially go off on longer hikes. I'd love to get to the point I can justify that through, taking 4 months off to go off and walk a trail with some new products to test. Like, that's the dream, isn't it? Like, to have a business that justifies your hobby, like, or a hobby that justifies your business, whichever way you look at it.
I think we share an attitude on that as well. I think I think we started the HiiKER as just, collecting a list of all the trails that we're eventually going to do at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you kind of, there's so many people have ideas and so few people act on them. Every hiker always, you'll always meet 3 or 4 people on each trip that are like, oh, I'm going to start a gear company when I get back, or I'm going to open a hostel on the Appalachian Trail or whatever. And no one ever does. but the fact that, like, I don't know, I think the same curiosity that led me to through hiking sort of led me to try this, really. Like, and yeah, it sounds like you're the same. It's I'm passionate about hiking, therefore that passion very easily transfers into doing this. Like, it's great to, like, yeah, I'm not able to go out through hiking anymore in the same sense that I was, but I did what I wanted to do with through hiking, and I know that, like, worst case scenario, I can revisit all those trails in a few years' time. Like, what a great thing to do. But for now, this is pretty good. I did sort of, there are like loads of like 100, 200 mile trails around here that I'd really like to sort of explore. And I think, running a business, as you know, is very, no one's as cheap as you are. Like, it's really easy for, you to do the work, and you end up like taking on loads of work and then never really switching off. Like, whereas actually it would be really good to get out on, I could probably quite easily work three weeks a month and still get just as much done. So the dream is that I do spend, a percentage of my time out on trail, and especially like interacting with the products that we create as well.
Yeah.
I've always been very, with the products that we sell, I sell them because I know them. I know, like I know how they feel. I know how they work. I know how they, because I've suffered under them for several, hundreds, if not thousands of miles. And yeah, so like, I always want to keep that. I always want to have that personal stake in the business. I always want to have, like, I know that this pack is as good as it can be because I've tested it. Like, so what I do always like take a pack out whenever I go out. It's like, I've got this growing pile of backpacks at home because, like, I always want to take out the latest thing that we've made. Like, so we're constantly refining and tweaking and redesigning and just sort of changing pocket openings a little and making the straps slightly different, sewing that together slightly differently. So, all these
they're a great excuse for each other. The pack is a great excuse to get out on the trail, and the trail is a great excuse to redefine the pack. Whatever.
My accountant's very understanding. She's always like, you can go off on like a long hike every year and put it down as a business expense because it's product testing. It's like, same reason like you can dash off out on the trail and be like, oh yeah, we had to have this pub lunch because we were testing this, testing to see if this feature works. Like,
I'm going to send this podcast to our accountants. Where's our commission? Look, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you. I'm sure we can chat for hours more about this and about your different hiking trips and things that you got planned and the business as well. It's really good to get that insight of where it came from and why you're doing it. And it's as I said, we can share a lot of ideas on that and kind of the reasons behind why we're doing what we're doing. But I suppose ultimately we're all in this for the love of it, but also to spread that love and get more people outside and experience the health and mental health benefits of being outdoors and hiking these trails. Because I agree with you, hiking is one of the best things you can do in the world. People say it's just walking, but it's walking. But it's walking miles.
There's something very mindful about it. I think just like slowing it all down, isn't it? Just coming back to bringing life back a few paces.
Yeah,
I think it's too easy to. I think that's what this bloody virus has been kind of quite good. Is sort of giving people the opportunity to sort of peek through the curtain of how their life could be if they changed everything. Like, suddenly like, oh, I've suddenly got 3 hours in my day. 3 hours, so I'm not having to commute to work anymore. All of this, like,
exactly.
So, but no, it's been really wonderful talking to you. And I downloaded your app the other day. I started having a play. It's encouraged me to go and walk the Cumbria Coast Path, which I didn't realise was a thing. So
there you go. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much again for your time, Tom. It's been an absolute pleasure, and maybe we will be speaking again soon.
Cool, dude. Yeah, thanks very much. Sorry, it's a long story. So yeah, thanks for bearing with me.
No problem. Tom Gale, CEO and founder of Atom Packs. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
So there you have it, my interview with Tom Gale. I really hope you enjoyed that. The guy has a really good story, and I'm sure we could have gone on for hours more, but he had to go out on his bike and break his neck, unfortunately, so we didn't have time to go any further than that. As always, if you are enjoying the show, please tell all your friends, tell everyone, run down the street, go up the mountains and shout at some dog and tell them to listen to this show, because we really appreciate it. But seriously, like, share, comment, do all the things. Get in touch if you want us to talk about any particular trails, if you want us to talk about anything to do with hiking or camping or anything like that. We love to hear suggestions for the podcast, because I'm just making this up as I go along, really. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm having fun, and if I can have fun while also giving you guys what you want to hear, then we're all going to be happy, you know? But yeah, like, share, comment, and I shall see you, or hear you, or talk to you in 2 weeks' time. Take care of yourselves. Happy trails and fair winds, as they say somewhere.